How about now, Stephen? Can you hear Stephen?
Yep.
Hello?
Yes. Yes. Have you,
Well, I know I'm working.
yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm good. It must be your end.
How about that, Stephen?
Yeah, I can hear you.
No, still can't hear? I can't hear you, that's for sure.
I can hear you.
All right. This is a little bit fun. So I guess the question, Stephen, is, can you give me a okay if you can at least hear me? Can you hear me? All right. Well, that's good. At least someone can hear me. No one else is here. We'll just wait for a moment. We'll see if someone else comes up. So once again, Bill Gates has let me down. I have to take it up with him just because he never got to have sex until he was 40. There's no need to take it out on the rest of the world. I've started marking all the essays and such, but again, it's a slow process, especially with our computer system. I did mark yours. You did okay. I'll send out your essay in an email, and it's got track comments and things that you did well, things that you didn't do well, and basically just sentence structure needs tightening up. The overall concept was fine, and all the rest is just getting back into the habit of academic writing. Because I take it you're like me and you're quite old.
Yep.
And it's been a while since you've, so it's, again, like, I went back to uni when I was 36. So, yeah, it took me a year and a half to work out how to write properly again. So, and that's all it is. Like, so there's nothing to be overly concerned about. It's just, and that's what this subject's more about doing, is about developing that skill again. Hence why it's referred to as a foundation unit. No, it looks like it's just you today. What happened to Rachel? I don't know. Well, we'll start up with it. And it's going to be a riveting little lecture, this one, because it's just you and me and you can't talk. So, awesome. What's that? Yeah, closer to the camera, Steve. Well, it says question or something, doesn't it? I don't know. The writing. I'll tell you what, mate, just send me an email and I'll answer your questions via email. Oh, this is great. Oh, hang on. Rachel's coming on.
I'm here.
Hello, Rachel.
Hi.
Can you hear me, Rachel?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Talk to me, Rachel. I can't hear you either.
Oh, I can hear you. Hello?
I don't know what's going on, but between Stephen, you can see Stephen, can't you, Rachel?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me.
Can you two hear each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I know you can all hear me, but Stephen, can you hear Rachel?
Yes. Yes.
Stephen, move. Are you dead?
Yes.
Oh, this is wonderful. Okay. Well, it's going to be really quick today because for whatever, well, at least you guys can hear me. If you come up with any questions about what we go over today with strategic planning, just find me an email and I will get it back to you very quickly. Okay.
Cool.
But pretty much we've gone over, for Rachel's benefit, we've gone over the difference between public or government-run organisations like AIS, various institutes of sports, various football or sporting codes that are run by government organisations. So we refer to them as public. We've gone over the not-for-profit, which is about any money they generate primarily is recycled back into the sport, which would include major sporting organisations like the NRL and the AFL, as well as then we looked at the profit running or the professional sporting organisations, which is predominantly when we're looking at private ownership of various clubs around the world, and their primary purpose is focused on profit maximising as opposed to win maximising. So that's the main difference. So we can have very wealthy organisations, and yet they can still be considered not-for-profit. Hello, Emmanuel. Can you count to 10 very loudly, Emmanuel?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay, yes, for whatever reason I can't hear anyone, but everyone can hear me. Rachel, did you hear Emmanuel count to 10?
Yes, I did.
So you guys can hear each other?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's all you, not me. What have I... Oh, mate. Oh, I tell you what. I'm going to hunt down bloody Bill Gates and just beat him senseless. It was a lot better when we just used a rock and chisel. All right, you guys work out what your problem is and fire me off an email and I'll get it back to you. So next 5 minutes, just discuss with yourselves what strategic management planning is to you guys. And I'll go get a coffee. All right, no, look, okay, look, the easiest way to look at it is, guys, so once we get, whether we're a professional sporting organisation or whether we're a not-for-profit or whether we are a government organisation, it's still about the planning and the running of the organisation and how we go about it. And irrespective of what size we are, we talk about the primary purpose is using a strategic management principle. And this is when I would ask you what planning is to you guys, and you would sit there and explain to me so well what planning is. But when we look at it, it's all about organising the direction of the company, the activities that are involved in the direction we want to go. It's sort of a generalised theory or component. Now, when we refer to strategy, it's about putting the planning together. So we're fine detailing it. So we could sit there and have a goal that we want to expand our organisation, whether it be a member base, a player base, a participant base, or funding. And we put together the plan with our major goals. So we all know what a goal is? Like Rachel knows, it's when you slam dunk, isn't it?
Yeah.
The girls slam dunk?
No.
In basketball? No, they don't.
Only
That's why
some.
they don't get on television. Start slam dunking and breaking the backboards.
Yeah.
No, but for those who don't remember, Rachel's a basketball player of some note. But I won't embarrass her too much. Well, too often anyway. So we sit there and that's what we look at. We've got planning and we've got a strategy to put that planning in motion. And when we combine it, we talk about strategic planning. It's about the process of defining the direction we want to head and the decisions that are going to get us there. And that's what we're really all we're talking about doing. Is it's all right, and I'm personally, I like to think I'm the ideas man. Whenever I've been with a team, I come up with a great idea. I think we need to do this. I then walk off and leave everyone else to sort out the problem. So I've come up with a goal and I leave everyone else to come up with the plan. So delegation is a very important part of life. So you want to make sure you can delegate the right way. Don't put that in your test. If you put that in your exam, you're going to fail, okay? I'll put it to you there. So we sit there and when we put together planning, we've got to look at the strategic and operational requirements. And it's about putting the general plan or the objective together and then putting together the goals for our objective and then prioritising those goals. Because if we're a new organisation, our goals could be increase our members, increase our players, increase our sponsors. And so we've then got to sit there and go, there are our three main goals, but which one would we need to prioritise? That's going to fluctuate from organisation. some people might say the first thing we need to do is get a competitive team. Because if you get a competitive team, people will come and watch. But then again, other people may say you need the members or the sponsors at first. So which one is a chicken and the egg? But the purpose is that we put together the goals and prioritise which goal we wish to see first, what we need to see and how we can get that. So is that understood? Just nod. Perfect. All right, so now when we talk about strategies, what sort of things do we need to... Here I am asking the question. What sort of things do we need to sit there and take into account? So we're going to look at, first of all, the capacity or the capability of the organisation. It's no good if you're just Bill and Ben and you're running your 3 teams if you all of a sudden want to become a national corporation. You don't have the capacity to do that. You've got to take in the environmental concerns, and I don't mean just the weather, but the environment, the industry, the community, how many people are interested. I guess Rachel would have first-hand experience of this, of trying to get the profile of women's sport or women's basketball actually raised in society. Because if you notice, the Australian men's cricket team lost again last night. But the women's cricket team has been quite successful. Yet who do we talk about? The cricket team, the men's. So they may have to look at how do we increase that environment. Like I said, there you go, Rachel, you can take it to the next Women's Basketball Association meeting and say, Trevor says we need to start slam dunking. There's your first strategy.
Yeah.
So we sit there and look at our direction and the scope we want to go and what we can incorporate. Then we've got key stakeholders, don't we? And again, this is when I would ask you who those key stakeholders were. Predominantly, they're going to be your members, your participants, and any sponsors. And you want to know what their position is. Because it's no good if your members and players want to stick to a local constructed competition and you want to take it national. Because the main stakeholders are the ones who are going to help you drive that. So we've got to make sure that they're on board with any decisions we make, or we're on board with their mindset. In the couple of the, like in the paper just recently, you've got the West Tigers have just sacked Robbie Farah. And he's the stalwart of the club, the fans are outraged, everyone's outraged. So they've got to work out the direction, they've obviously worked out the direction they wish to head. This is part of their plan, that they've got to remove him from the situation for whatever reason. But now they've got the stakeholders, the members and the supporters who are the backbone of the club, they're coming in to have their say. So you can make a decision, but you need to be able to support that decision and get the message to the rank and file or the stakeholders for them to agree. So we then get them on board with it. Otherwise you end up with a lot of faction fighting. And we've seen that a lot in a lot of sporting clubs. Parramatta Eels a few years ago had a civil war going on. The Manly Sea Eagles, they've also had civil wars. Football Australia's had their trouble. And so we need to make sure that we're all on to eliminate this sort of conflict that is going to come out, because everyone's going to have their own ideas, their own objectives, and their own best way to do it. So we've got to make sure that the message is similar across. And what's the best way to get this message across to people? What do we want to provide for them up front? Speak up. That's right, Emmanuel, you're correct. We're talking about long-term direction. So you might come out and go, you know, we're going to sack Robbie Farah. He's only got 2 years left in his career. It is unfortunate, but we think we need a young team to develop this club over the next 5, 6, 7 years. We've struggled for the last decade. We're now looking beyond that for a long-term goal to enhance and put West Tigers at the top of the ladder as opposed to the bottom where they currently sit. Because hopefully we've got away from this policy of looking at long-term goals. Everyone wants immediate success. And that's not just in sport, that's in society in general. So we need to look at that and provide them. Because as you know, it's all right to have an idea, but if people don't understand where that's going, it'll be harder to get it across to them. So that's why we want to look at this long-term goal to give them the direction. That's what the plan is, and this is the steps that we're going to use to get there, okay? So when we plan a goal or a process, what do we put in place? How do we go about doing it? Anyone? Can't hear you. Come on, speak up, guys. Come on. All right. Well, first of all, we've mentioned it. We've spoken about it a lot. It's all about establishing the goal. What the desire is, or the want that the organisation wants, and the priorities that we put in place. Our goals are set, the priorities, the direction we're heading, and which one's the most priority. Then do we all understand, have we all heard SWOT analysis in goal analysis? Strength, weakness, opportunity, and a threat. We're going to go on that. We're going to look to that to determine the speed bumps, the opportunities that will open to the organisation because of this direction, what's going to influence or have a negative impact on the club, and how we can accommodate that. Because as they say, if you plan for the worst, you can be pleasantly surprised. But if you think nothing's going to go wrong and you don't prepare for it by looking at this long-term and that, look at what the weaknesses are, look at what the threats that have come to you are, then when they hit, you haven't got the plans or the mechanisms in place to deal with them. And you can't prepare for everything, but you need to look at the strengths and the weaknesses, the opportunities to thrive, and yet the threats that can limit the movement that or the direction you're heading. You probably want to look at analysis of alternative plans and directions, because remember when we spoke about it last week, when we actually could talk to each other, we spoke about volunteers and keeping volunteers involved and putting it out there, asking them for their opinions. So you want to have a look at other ideas and other concepts from the other stakeholders and at least evaluate their ideas. Because it would really suck if their idea was better than yours and you didn't even apply it. But if you also analyse theirs and you can put up the reasons why you're not following it, it sort of can end in it can remove that dissent question, because they go, well, they did consider what my options were. They looked at my plan and they gave me a detailed background or brief as to why they weren't following that, how it didn't meet this agenda, that agenda, or the obligations or the obstacles if we did use that method. So we want to be able to do that. And then once we've got all these goals, once we've got our SWOT analysis done, what do you think we then do? That's right. Well done, Rachel. Yes, we implement it. So we implement this plan, and once it's implemented, what are we going to do over the next couple of years, Stephen? Review it, don't it? Yeah, I know what you said. Don't swear, Stephen. I can read lips. So we review the plan, don't we? We might have a 6-month, a 12-month, or a 2-year plan. Did I mention to you guys last week? I can't remember if it was the face-to-face or the online group. We spoke about the speed zones around schools in New South Wales. Emmanuel, did we talk about that? Sort of. Around New South Wales, it could be nationwide now, I'm not exactly sure, but it's a 40-kilometre zone around schools between certain hours when the kids are about. And this is how we can sit there and apply a plan and then review it. When they first brought this plan in, they ran a trial, and it was going to be a 2-year trial. Sorry, that way, not that way. 2-year trial around 6 school zones that had a horrendously high rate of school kids knocked down by cars and hospitalised. Not just knocked down, but actually hospitalised. And it was a 2-year plan to evaluate it. After 12 months, they reviewed the plan. And in that period of time, of those 6 schools, not one of them had had a child knocked down. So not even to the extent of being hospitalised, just not knocked down. So instead of extending the review for 2 years, they cut the review or cut the pilot study off and implemented it across band. So that's a positive effect of it, that we sit there and after 12 months go, why are we still only doing a partial project? Let's bring this in. This is so effective. But the same thing can. Usually it doesn't happen that easy. Usually you don't sit there and go, wow, this is just really good and it's working well. So after 6 months, you're going to have some teething problems. After 12 months, you're going to have teething problems. And there's always going to be things that you didn't realise were going to be impacted. So you need to constantly review it. And then so it needs to be a fluid plan. You need to be able to adapt and improvise so that you can meet the challenges that come from ever applying this plan. Because if you just go for 2 years, 3 years, you know, 3 years' time, if you haven't reviewed it, haven't looked at it, what have you ended up with? It might be the perfect system, or it might just be a total cluster and just a total FUBAR situation. Do you all know the Latin term FUBAR?
No.
Steve does, don't you? Oh, come on, ex-Navy man. You don't? Something beyond all recognition. And snafu, have you guys heard of snafu? Really? You guys need to study your language. You do. I'll tell you what, go and hire Private Ryan or Saving Private Ryan. They'll use those terms FUBAR and snafu. And that's what we don't want. We don't want a situation where things are just always problematic. We're going to have problems, we're going to have challenges. But if we don't review and assess each step of the way, they just become manifested in the operating. And all that does is put everyone offside. Have you ever been in a situation, any of you three, where you've been operating and you just know something's going wrong, no one wants to do anything about it, and so you just sit there and wait for the next problem? And when it happens, you just laugh and go, the bosses are just idiots. See you later, I'm out of here. And when you're doing a sporting organisation and you rely on your rank and file, your volunteers, your members, what do? They leave. I was actually waiting for a response, and I don't know why. But they leave, don't they? They just sit there and go, you know what? This is crap. I'm not staying here. This is in the army we used to call it it's just a rock show. I don't know why we use the term a rock show. I've never been to a rock show, but basically it was just saying this is, you know, what is it? The inmates are in charge of the asylum, and people will just leave. And if you become disenfranchised with a club or an organisation, how easy is it to then get those people back to that organisation? Is it easy? No, it's difficult, isn't it? They've been burnt. Once you're burnt, it's hard to win back that trust and that loyalty. So we need to look at that to put those in place. So now you're going to have a conversation with yourselves about some of the things that you yourself have seen. So a long-range planning process, though. Do we think that would be a 1 year, a 2 year, a 3 year, 5 year, 10 year? So you're thinking 5 year?
5 year.
I guess most people would look between 3 to 5 years, but depending, it could be as short as 6 to 12 months, depending on the type of organisation and what change you're looking to institute. But if you've got a long-range view, what are you going to have, or a long-range plan, what are you going to have in that time? In business, we call it key performance indicators. In other words, we're going to sit there and have, I guess in goal analysis or setting goals, we have short-term goals, acute goals, chronic and long-term goals. In a sporting context, say, such as a team like Rachel, you might have short-term goals will be the Asia Pacific Championships. Long-term goals might be World Championships or Olympics, depending on which it is, and you set that structure. And it's similar with an organisation. You're going to have points between where you start and that end of that long-term goal, and you're going to have various points along the way for do the checks and balances. And when you talk checks and balances, you're going to put them up as key performance indicators or key objectives that you wish to meet by this stage. Now, if we want to get 10,000 members, you might look that by 1 year into the program, you've increased your membership by, say, 2,000. Could be a raw figure, or it could be an absolute or a relative figure. We want to increase our membership by 10% each year for the next 5 years, and that will increase overall memberships by so much. Or you could increase performance on the field, your revenue, how much profit you're making at the club to support the development. It could also talk about the increase in your junior development programs. Any single factor that you've planned for, you want to look at how are we going to get to the end, and what steps are we going to know throughout that period of time that we can put in place to test and make sure, are we on track? If we're not at that level, what do we need to put in place to enhance, or where are the problems? Why are we falling short? So that's all about the step process. So again, here we come up to, why do you think we need to undertake strategic manning? What's management? Strategic management. Why is it so important, Emmanuel? Come on, don't be shy. Speak up. Is he correct, Stephen? Do you agree with him? You sure? He's looking like he's a doubting Thomas. Never trust a dentist. Well, one reason that we look at it and what the benefit is of any sort of, whether you want to call it strategic management or planning, is it's proactive. How many times, I guess, to really look at it, is a political party has a long-term plan or a strategic plan to win office. Then once they win office, they have this strategic plan, whether it be economic, job security, stability, whatever it happens to be. But then they start responding to the polls, don't they? All of a sudden they change this because they're no one likes them anymore. And so they start reacting. Now can you imagine if you're trying to run an organisation like that? So the purpose of a strategic management plan is it's proactive, it's setting everything in place in advance to build to, as opposed to reacting to something. Because if you go on and just react, oh, we suddenly need this, let's do this, whoops, now we need more members, whoops, now we need more money, and you're responding to problems that occur, what you can find is that while you're doing one project, it could actually interfere on the other, so there's no cohesion between the direction that we need to take. So it's reacting to situations rather than planning it in advance, and the great buzzword of being proactive. We can also put in place problems that we think could come up. We're going to try this. If this doesn't work, we'll review it and consider various other options. What happens if we start doing something? Stop talking to your roommate, Rachel. Yeah, I'm watching. I haven't marked your essay yet, Rachel. Be careful. But what about the other thing is, if we've got a plan in motion and things are going quite well and we review it, what opportunity can it also provide us for? That it puts us in a position to, again, now for a moment, watch this. Talk to me, Rachel.
Can you hear me now?
No, I still can't. You just blocked out your mic, I saw.
Yeah, I just...
You don't want the guys to hear you talking to your friends.
I didn't want to come on a full screen.
I can't read your lips, don't worry. Making. So it puts you in a place that when an opportunity comes up for you to extend or branch, you're in a position where you can make better mental blank. Well done, Trev. It helps you adapt and improvise and take advantage of a situation that could be beneficial when it comes up. Whereas if you're always responding to things after they've happened, by the time something come up that you could adapt to, you've probably missed the boat. And the other thing is, and the basis is, it just helps coordinate everything that everyone has. So we have everyone, and they might all have their own little projects, but they're all moving together to get to the one picture. So we haven't got Tom over here pulling on Jeff over here to go this way. So we haven't got different groups pulling different ways. Everyone's directed together. So it's better coordinated for them. And that's where the real advantage of it comes. So then we look at it and go, and how are we going to put it into place? What do we do? How do we go about it? Do we just sit there and just throw it around, sit around? Most sporting clubs, how would they come up with it? Sit around having a few beers around the sausage sizzle? It's about, first of all, we would have to analyse, wouldn't we? In other words, let's look at the problems of the club. Look at similar clubs around and what they've got in place. How do we stack up and compare? Then we sit there and identify what's the direction we want to head. Okay, so do we need to expand? Do we need to drift across? What do we need to actually do to enhance the club? Otherwise, if you don't get that concept of where you want to be, you can't design a plan to get you there. And then we've got to develop it. And how are we going to develop it? Are the 5 boardmen going to sit there and come up with the idea? No? Or would you then go to the other stakeholders and find out the people at the grassroots, ask for their feedback, ask for their input as to what they believe and how they think it can happen? Because in many cases, a lot of people who are with a club may have been in other clubs. They may have seen methods that worked extremely well, or they may have seen things that were just chaotic. So someone comes up with a great idea and everyone goes, that's an awesome idea. And then Joe goes, hang on, I came from a club that did that and it was a total disaster. So you want to go to the people who are actually running it and going to organising your club or working with it and find out what their experience is, their knowledge is, and their belief is. You don't necessarily have to take it on board and run with it, but you want to consult them and to find out what experience and knowledge do they have on this move or on this plan. And then we sit there and we implement it, which is pretty simple. And do we just sort of implement it, go, okay, we come up with an agreement, let's go, we start Monday? Or would you provide it similar to a countdown? You'd give them a countdown, some notice of when you're going to introduce it, wouldn't you? Yes, Emmanuel? You would, wouldn't you? Awesome. Similar to when they get rid of the toll booths and they give everyone 12 months notice it's going to be a cashless toll booth. Imagine the chaos if they didn't tell anyone and just suddenly got rid of the cash. And everyone's getting photos of their car driving through these cashless toll booths. So we've got to put this plan in place, but to implement it, we've got to forewarn the stakeholders. We're going through a change. It's going to be exciting. The state government's done it extremely well in New South Wales at the moment. They've got major chaos happening in Sydney CBD because they've got all this infrastructure and development happening to cope with the expansion that Sydney's undergoing. Now, they basically come out and say it's going to be a total cluster. It's going to be chaos. You know, we're sorry, but at the end of the day, it's going to benefit us. But you forewarn and you get everyone on side rather than everyone turning up one day to find out the road's blocked. I've been coming this way to work for 20 years. I have no idea how to get to work now. What do you mean I've got to turn right, then left, then left, then right? How's that going to help me? You know, people, we don't like change. And then we're going to evaluate. And we'll set times up to evaluate. We'll look at it in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It's always you've got to reevaluate, remeasure, reset, go again. Have we ever Steve, you do, is it triathlons or running over mountains or riding push bikes over mountains or something? Something crazy, I don't, haven't you heard of the car? They get over hills so much faster, really. But you sit there and you don't suddenly go, okay, I'm going to take on an ultra endurance event. What's the furthest you've ever run? 400 metres to the bus. You're not going to do that and just go straight out. You're going to put it in plans to develop and progress throughout, correct? And that's what you do when you need to make these changes. And you're going to measure yourself. How effectively am I going? Yes, I want to compete in the Hawaiian Ironman. Have you ever done that, Steve? Why not? Come on, pussy, toughen up. Oh, dear, I've had too many coffees today. Okay, get in there, have a look at this. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, read that in your own time and discuss it. What is that? Oh, yeah, it's just talking about what we've been talking about. All right. What do we put in process? Again, directing this is asking you questions like I can hear. When we put something in process, how do we work out the decision-making process? Because people are going to have their ideas all throughout it. So are we just going to allow everyone to speak to anyone about it, or are we going to put something in process to deal with that? We're going to put something in process?
Yes.
Or are we going to just let anyone put in their comments anywhere? Nah.
No.
Yeah, Manuel, yeah, good on you. Haven't marked yours yet either.
I know.
So, yeah, think of it along those lines. So you want decision making at each stage and each level, because you're going to put in place a number of people to bring the change in or bring the various stages in. You want to know at what level each person is responsible and when do they have to go ahead. After all, the term's micromanaging. If you've ever worked under someone who micromanages, you know it's a nightmare. You've got to run every decision by them. You spend more time talking to and fro than ever actually getting something done. Whereas sometimes it's more effective to go, okay, look, you know what? If it's got no budgetary restraints, you can implement the changes you see and just forward us on in an email. Whereas if it's a budgetary restraint or if it's something to do with a major structural design fault, then yes, you have to come with us. So you want to put it at what level each of the concepts or at each time a decision can be made. What can the rank and file or the people at the coal face, what decisions can they deal with, and what decisions need to go up? And one thing that helps is it helps the people involved, the volunteers, have some autonomy over what they're doing for the club, and then they have a greater responsibility, and with that gives them a greater emphasis to do a better job. Whereas if you've ever been in a position where you're not permitted to make a decision, you don't actually bother putting much effort in, do you? You know, I'll just refer it on. I actually had a CAT scan on an injury, and the bloke who ran the X-ray or the CAT scan came in and said, okay, and he was just sitting there talking to me. He goes, oh, well, it's obvious that you've got this and this happening, but I'm going to have to go and see the surgeon because he's going to have to come in here and tell you because I don't know anything. Well, obviously, in that particular organisation, there was a bit of conflict going between the person doing the job and the doctor. And sure enough, he came in and the bloke told me, and then the surgeon came in and he basically said what the other guy said. And I just said, that guy's leaving very quickly. Because he's not going to stay there, is he? Why is it I'm always being doubted? You have to trust me. I'm here to do a job. Back me. And that's where micromanaging can be problematic. And you need to have a certain amount of latitude in allowing people to make various decisions. Now, they're not going to totally allow a decision that changes the whole plan and direction, but you need to have some form of open communication where they can bring their concerns. But you most definitely don't want them all being able to put in everything they want whenever they want. And what do you think that is? Again, I'm waiting to hear from you again. Because all of a sudden you're going to hear about the person whinging about the pies that they can no longer get to because we cut the power to the canteen. So we need to sit there and make sure that there's an avenue to deal with certain problems and who someone... It's no different than a reporting basis. If you're in a sporting competition, with most sporting competitions except the NRL and soccer, the only person who's allowed to speak to the referee or the umpire is the captain. No one else is permitted to address them. And that eliminates any problem. And so if you've got a problem, you go through your captain, the captain then takes it to the referee. And that way it just keeps everything in control, or the captain can sit there and go, oh, look, you've just been a dickhead, don't worry. Okay? We've told him that, yes, everyone's offside, rather than have people harping all the time. And if you have people who are constantly complaining to the boss, what happens when they bring up a topic of interest? Has the boss already tuned out to them because they're hearing every time? You've probably got teammates or people that you've worked with in the past, or students when you previously said, and all they do is complain. And so when they've actually got an issue to complain about, no one wants to listen to them. Okay? Or is that you on the team, Rachel?
Maybe.
No, not me. Not me. It's the centre. It's not me. It's the centre.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to address the referees or umpires in basketball, Rachel?
Yeah, you can.
Yes, you are?
Yeah.
Some little bit, but I dare say it probably moves too fast to sit there and have a big whinge like we do in most of the footballs.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, football's a man's sport, except when you get penalised and then you cry like a baby. And that's what we sort of wanted to go through. Now, what we're supposed to do now is have a little chat about different organisations and different structures and the sort of plans they did. But because for whatever reason I can't hear you, we'll have to sort of bypass that today. Have you guys all got onto the Facebook page I set up for this subject?
No.
No, look at Rachel. What's Facebook? I don't even know what Facebook is, she says. Have a look. There's an SPB 1301 Facebook page. I don't know what it's called. But I put up on it because we're now looking at your your next task, which is task 3, which is a 1,200-word essay. And it's basically looking at the Hillsborough disaster, which was a problem that occurred in a FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham, I think, where 96 people ended up dead through crowd crush. And it's looking at the breakdown in the administration, the organisers, and which people. Now, to give you some concept or some idea of it, if you're not familiar with it, there's a couple of links to a couple of 15-minute videos from YouTube on the Hillsborough disaster. It doesn't go into so much as to the causes and implications, but more about what happened. And they show you time by time each of the major situations and how the problem developed, built, and led to it. So just to get your mind into the actual day of the events and what led to it. Then when you read through the report, you can refer back to the visual from watching that video of it. And you can see how a couple of small problems became a few major problems, which then developed into a disaster. And I guess one of the most interesting aspects is the smaller of the videos actually talks about this problem had occurred repeatedly at the same stadium in the past. It happened in '89, and they spoke to a few people who had been in similar instances without that tragic response as far back as 1981. So, and the idea is to have a look at through the Hillsborough report. They had an inquest into it that looked into all the problems, and that's sort of what we're looking at. Okay, you're referencing so far from what I've looked generally is people are getting a handle on referencing, but again, review over, fine-tune. If you've got any real serious issues with your referencing from your task 2, that will be attached to your essay in track comments. Okay, I'll put in comments along it, go along. Yes, I can see what you're doing, but you need to go and re-look at that. Your full stop's in the wrong spot. You know, that sort of pedantic stuff. Okay. If you don't receive your essay emailed to you, you should be able to access it straight through Turnitin, and it should have my track comments there as well. Because for some it worked, for some it didn't, so some I downloaded it. Like Steve, I downloaded yours, marked it, and you'll get yours emailed. All right. So any other questions, guys? No? Excellent. This is what I like. I might try this with my face-to-face group. I tell you, this would be so much more effective. Yeah, like I've got no idea what had happened. I'm glad you can hear me. It would have been better if I could hear you, but you three can hear each other. Yes?
Yes.
Wow. Well. All right, guys. Thanks for coming in. So get on to the look at the Hillsborough. The reading material should be open to you to read as well on the actual summary of the report. Read the summary report, please. It's 28 pages. The full report is 20,000 pages. Don't get those two documents confused. No, says Rachel, no. And if you want, there's even a movie out, The Hillsborough Disaster.
Okay.
Okay. All right, guys, thanks for coming in. If you've got any questions of anything that you're not really sure about from today, just fire me an email and I'll send it back to you today, okay?
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in, guys. We'll see you next week, and hopefully I can hear you.
Bye.
Yeah, right.